Welcome back to another episode of Warren Cali. In this episode, I will detail a crazy story of San Francisco rapper Money P. The Fillmore District was created in the 1880s to provide new space for the city to grow in an effort to address overcrowding. After the 1906 earthquake in San Francisco, Fillmore Street, which had largely avoided heavy damage, temporarily became a major commercial center as the city downtown rebuilt, and it began a period where the district had migrant groups from Jews to Japanese, and then African Americans took over the community. After World War II, the Fillmore District and San Francisco as a whole began to have a large African American population. Between the years of 1940 and 1950, the African American population of San Francisco grew from 4,000 to 43,000. A vast majority of these African Americans lived in the Fillmore District. Many had left the South in the Great Migration in order to escape the Jim Crow laws. This influx of African Americans during and after World War II created racial tension. Many were forced to live in certain areas of the city, and the Fillmore became a prominent area. After the war, the African American population contributed to significantly the growing jazz culture in the Fillmore. With clubs flourishing, jazz became prominent in Fillmore. It became known as Harlem of the West. In addition, the trend of African American migration to the city and the district continued at a fast pace until it reached its peak at 13% in the 70s for the whole city, which the Fillmore had around 70% of African Americans. But unfortunately, during the 70s, the Fillmore District was at the forefront of the redevelopment effort going on in the city. Many people call this the decline of the Fillmore District as a whole and for jazz and African Americans in the city. Many people said this happened because the black community was flourishing and they wanted to bring it down. Since the redevelopment started in the 1970s, the African American population in San Francisco went from around 13% to just under 6% in its current day. Fillmore had a share of landmarks and things that made it one of the most important parts of the city. But just like anywhere, Fillmore started to have its own crime and have gangs. The Fillmore District was once a rich and thriving community full of black people, but that would later change with many businesses and shops being torn down for the newly built housing projects, leaving many jobs and opportunities being taken away and replaced with poverty and no opportunity. This energy will reflect what the community will later be known for. The Fillmore District, later known as Fillmo, by the 80s would have a host of gangs out of several different housing projects, and with the drug trade coming in by the 80s, the community became wicked. Drug dealers, addicts, robbery, and murder became the norm to see. Several crews later dominated Fillmore for decades to come, and that leads us to the story. The western edition of San Francisco, also known as Fillmore, according to SFPD, has 17 gangs within its border. The area east of Fillmore Street is locally referred to as downtown Fillmore, while the area west of Fillmore is known as uptown Fillmore. Gangs in the Mo fall into two different groups, being uptown and downtown, and even that is divided into several different projects.
Fillmore Street is like the borderline between uptown and downtown. The district ends on like Haight and Page that way, right? And it goes all the way to Eddy and Geary that way. And Fillmore is the borderline between downtown, where you at right now, and uptown, where y'all was just talking to Quinn at.
By the 90s and the 2000s, Fillmore began to demolish several different projects, leaving many people homeless. The Plaza East towers were demolished in 1999. A gang called OC members left the area. With the opening of Plaza East Public Housing in 2001, several members of the OC returned to the area. With the opening of the new complex, the gang adopted a new name, being Eddie Rock. Now Eddie Rock began to stake his claim in Fillmore, building a drug enterprise and gaining rivals. Eddie Rock, after his formation, the gang established operating procedures for their drug sales in their territory. And that brings us to this story. Money P was born Paris Muffet Jr. on February 25th, 2000. He grew up in Frisco's Fillmore District and had major connections to Eddie Rock, with his father being Paris Muffet Sr., an alleged leader in the Eddie Rock community. San Francisco PD said the alleged gang leader was convicted in federal court of possession with intent to distribute crack and possession of a firearm in the past. But the young Paris wasn't known all the way for being in the streets like his father. He was a hooper at a point, but this later would change, and his affiliations would later be his demise. Now Eddie Rock rapper Dex Kruger, by 2018, was an up-and-coming rapper making noise with a song that went gold in the streets, being called Keep It. That got him attention, and he followed that up with several songs. One of Dex's last songs was called Ambitious, and this song has featured Paris Jr., who was going by Money P at this time. That song came out in August of 2022, and in the song, Money P and Dex would go straight at their ops, having several lines dissing enemies. Just weeks later, like I covered before, in a story about Dex Kruger, he'd be shot and killed on September 8th, 2022, at a dice game in his hood that went bad, when shots start flying, leaving Dex in critical condition. which he would later die from. That same day, Money P went to the hospital to visit Dex, but what he didn't know was that he was being followed. Money P and another man would be shot, and the other man's name was Dominique. He would lose his life, and Money P would become crippled from the ambush shooting. Dominique was sitting in a parked vehicle on the north side of 27th Street, and Paris was sitting outside the vehicle when a car drove by on 27th Street, and someone began shooting at both men. Dominique later died at the hospital. But this story will only get crazier. After originally being shot in September of 2022, Money P became paralyzed, and by 2023, he was in a facility for rehabilitation. A 23-year-old Money P was in his room at Lake Merritt Healthcare Center on MacArthur Boulevard in Oakland just before 1 a.m. on March 11, 2023. Two men snuck through the facility through an unlocked back door, which seemed like a setup. They went in a room that Money P shared with at least another patient and then shot him numerous times. He died at the scene. The back door of the facility was left unlocked, and security at the facility was said to be lax. Many people would complain about this.
Partially paralyzed patient at a skilled nursing facility in Oakland was shot and killed in his room. That attack happened in the middle of the night over the weekend.
Oakland police now are looking for two men who ran from that scene. KTVU crime reporter Henry Lee spoke to the victim's mother.
He did not deserve to go that way. It was a heinous crime.
23-year-old Paris Moffitt, who was partially paralyzed, was shot and killed in his room in the middle of the night at an Oakland care facility. Moffitt's mother, who did not want to be identified, said her son was paralyzed from the waist down after he was shot at 27th and Broadway in Oakland in September. Now she's mourning her only child.
I can't believe anybody would do that to somebody that's not even able to even protect themselves.
Our understanding was it was a targeted shooting, a targeted murder.
It happened at Lake Merritt Healthcare Center on MacArthur Boulevard in Oakland's Adams Point neighborhood just before 1 Saturday morning. Oakland City Council member Dan Cobb represents the area.
Lake Merritt Healthcare Center will say it was conducting an internal investigation into the incident, and they will also say, "Our sympathies are with the family at this difficult time." The facility said in a statement that they apologized. Oakland PD had a $10,000 reward for any info about Money P's murder, but no one was ever caught. Money P's mom would say, "He did not deserve to go out that way. I can't believe anybody would do that to somebody that's not even able to protect themselves." Money P lost 2 people in 24 hours and was shot and paralyzed himself. Then several months later, he was killed while trying to recover in a facility. That's the same amount of events, but the streets always lead back to this. But I guess that's how the streets go. If they want you, they gonna keep coming and trying to get you. And unfortunately, that was the fate of Money P. This will conclude this episode. If you haven't already, check out my previous episodes. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.